On this Sega Talk, we page through each issue of the North American official Sega Dreamcast magazine. What articles caught our attention? How did the magazine come to be? Joining us via archival SegaBits interview clips are magazine staff members Simon Cox and Francesca Reyes to give us an inside look at working with Sega, the final days of the Dreamcast, and more on Sega Talk. SegaBits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega, with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to episode number 149 of Sega Talk. I'm Barry, and with me is Editor-in-Chief, George.
Hello, everyone. I like that title, Editor-in-Chief. It's like a war thing, you know? It almost sounds like the military.
I always pick and choose my titles depending on who I'm talking to. Like, if I want to get a review code, I'm like, hey, I'm a writer. Right. And if I want, like, access, I'm like, I'm the editor.
Yeah, of course. It's interchangeable, right, with sites like us. I've seen people have some of the weirdest titles ever, so it is.
I mean, for me, editor just means that you and I are able to go in and delete people's stuff.
Well, that's true. And I was going to say, what do you think is more powerful, editor or influencer?
That's a very good question. I think influencers are their own beast, whereas editors have to deal with the corporate overlords. Though, you know, you never know. Like, some of those influencers are now, like, owned by media companies, which is just insane to me. But no one owns us. Yes. You won't scroll to the bottom of SegaBits.com when it's like a future media conglomeration, and it's like Nintendo Life actually owns us, which would be hilarious.
They actually do.
They actually do.
Yeah.
But you know who actually owns us, George? Our friends at patreon.com/SegaBits. This is not a Patreon pick, but if you support us at a certain tier, you get to tell us what to talk about. In fact, we've been doing a lot of Patreon picks this year, and so it's rare for us to have like a personal pick. And
usually
this one's
I
a personal pick. Yeah. Well, you know, it's just kind of how it worked out. And I don't know what else to say about Patreon. You get the shows early, sometimes 1 to 2 weeks early. You get audio early, video early. It's great. It's a great community of people. We are very thankful to them. And let's get on with the show. So, this episode we are talking about the official Sega Dreamcast magazine. It was published by Imagine Media, and it holds the official Sega Dreamcast license. It ran for 13 issues, which includes the premiere issue 0, from June 1999 through January 28th, 2001. And those might be the newsstand dates. You know, the covers always have, like, you ever get a magazine that says, like, the July issue, and it's, like, May? Right,
yeah, definitely does.
Yeah, because it's very different from what the internet is like, where the news is current the day you get it, whereas I feel like with magazines they had to play like keep up, so they would like future title their magazine so that even though it was published a month earlier, when you get it you're like, oh, this is fresh, it's news from the future,
right?
And that kind of, I don't know, worked against them because magazines in the end were coming out after the Dreamcast was like announced to be dead, which was kind of odd,
right?
But yeah, so this magazine, it was notable for an excellent team of writers, a larger than normal format with premium printing techniques. I'll hold one up so you can get an idea of how large these are. Like, these are massive magazines,
right?
They're the size of my head, and they smell nice too, but they feel like they're like 2 inches longer
than like a regular magazine, like the Game Informers or the I don't know, EGM.
In fact, this is a good time for me to show this off. I think it's actually the same size. Look at this. Do you remember Limited Run had their like newsletters for a while?
They send
Limited Run Games.
They send me like 100 of those Shenmue 3 ones.
Yeah, they're great. But yeah, this is their little throwback to official Dreamcast magazine, so I thought I'd show that off. But yeah, and so they had premium printing techniques, which we'll hear about later, as well as demo discs, which will be discussed on a future Sega Talk. And most importantly, they had direct access to Sega, but without all the butt kissing. And George, so we both read this magazine.
What?
And it was... You did.
I'm waiting for the movie. I'm waiting for the movie with like Jack Black and Kevin Hart to be playing characters. Okay, no, yeah, we've read it. Sorry.
We have. And it was one of the first things I feel like we connected on when we were working on Sega Bits in those very early days. What are your earliest memories of ODCM, and how did it impact you?
I think it's a lot of the hype, and also like knowing more about the creators behind a lot of the teams. Like you said, back then there was these like teams, and they had their names, and they made. So we thought at the time, because it was like a moment in time in Sega history where they made a certain type of game. You know, Sonic Team made the more, I guess, Nintendo, as close as Nintendo it gets. AM2 was the arcade fighting game guys, and then it was the Smile Bit that did Jet Set Radio. So, and I think this magazine kind of kept that all in line. They did a good job doing that. It looked really nice. It looked better than any magazine in the shelf at the time. I'm trying to think of any other one. Even the official PlayStation magazine never had wide covers like that or premium ink. So it was always a cut above the rest. The writing was really well done. They had this really cool little like they had really unique ideas for articles, like the Samba de Amigo party. It gave it their own flair and character. I think it embodied the writers that were part of the team of these magazines.
I feel like in that era, in that like early 2000s era, they really liked to make the creative team behind the magazine a little more at the forefront. Like they would have caricatures, like anime drawings of them. They would have like back and forth between them and like little. There's a great article. We're not going to touch on it, but it's like one where they're playing through Power Stone too, like previewing it. But they're actually just like talking to each other. And I guess the equivalent now would be like when like a presidential debate's going on, and you get like a live, like almost Discord feed on the New York Times from all the writers, and it's a little looser. It gives a little more personality to it, and you also would see that on X-Play, like Morgan Webb and that guy who kind of looks like Roger Craig Smith. Weirdly, what's his name?
Robert Gray. Which guy?
The other host of X-Play.
The guy, not the bald guy. The other guy.
The bald guy, the weird guy.
Oh, Adam something.
Not Adam Savage, but yeah.
The other guy. Then.
I saw him at Sonic's anniversary party, and I didn't realize it was him until later. But
well, what are you gonna do?
But like they were like,
were you gonna fight
they were
him?
like the stars of the show. I was gonna fight him.
Okay.
and so they had something really special where you kind of felt like you knew the team. So when you saw who was writing a review, you were kind of like, oh, that's the goofy guy from the last issue. I don't know, it's kind of special. And yeah, and so like as far as like early memories of this magazine for me, I got in, I think, at like issue 4, if I'm not mistaken. So I was a little late. I think that was maybe issue 3. It was the Dead or Alive 2 cover. That's probably what it was. And so, you know, I kind of had to do a little catch up there, hitting eBay and picking up the early issues that I missed. Thankfully, they were very affordable at the time.
Are they affordable still?
You know, that's a good question. I haven't actually done an eBay dive.
For magazines. I mean, you probably have every magazine you want already.
I have every Sega Visions, I have every Dreamcast magazine, and I have the I think it's called the Team Sega newsletter or whatever it is.
Before it was Sega Vision?
Yeah, but not the first few, because those ones are really hard to get. But Yeah, I'll just do a quick look here for issues. So,
and it was also,
the funny
I think,
thing is,
I was gonna say, it's also the last time that like magazines were kind of in the forefront of news, because like right after this, it was the 360 and PS3. People were already downloading games, and news was more. Everyone was online already at that point, so it was like, yeah, you wouldn't be able to hear crazy stories like the Erupt ending or those weird stories towards the end about I don't know, DVD players playing Dreamcast games without the magazine like this. But yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, and so I mean, looking at eBay, it's actually fairly affordable. A lot of them. Issue 11 with Phantasy Star Online is $20. Issue 9 is $20. Seems like $20 without the demo disc is the going rate. You might pay a premium on like the Shenmue and Jet Set Radio covers. And there are a few oddities. One thing I was like watching for a while, I don't think I'm going to buy it because it's like $15, but it's just like a piece of it's like like the magazine would be inserted in it. And it was like given away as a free issue. It was issue 1 when it was like a giveaway at some stores. That's one of the things. If you have a magazine collection, go through and like page through them, because I was finding some fun little things. I found like an envelope that I saved that had the Dreamcast magazine like logo on it, and it must have been like a renewal envelope. You know, weird things like that. But yeah, so talking about issue 0, so official Dreamcast magazine, it kicked off with issue 0 in June of 1999, and thanks to a 2013 interview, George, it's been 11 years since we talked to these people.
Right. It doesn't feel like yesterday. It does feel like a long time, but it somehow, for me, I don't know, it feels like it should be longer than 11 sometimes. But then,
oh, wow.
I don't know. Maybe I'm different. What about you?
I don't know. I have that gif of the guy from Last Crusade who drank the wrong cup aging, like playing on loop in my head right now. That's how I'm feeling about it. But but yeah, so we had the opportunity to interview some people who were there. So here is the story of how that premiere issue came out. You will hear in this clip Francesca Reyes, who was an official Dreamcast magazine writer, and at the time was the editor-in-chief of official Xbox magazine, and Simon Cox, who was the editor-in-chief of the official Dreamcast magazine for the first half of its run. And then they brought in Ricardo Torres, who worked at CNET Game Center, and I believe he also worked for GameSpot. But he really came from very early online media compared to print at the time, and I'm very thankful that they invited him on, because I never would have thought about him. But if you listen to the clips we're going to play throughout the show, and also revisit the whole interview itself, he remembers everything. Like, you can talk to him about the Seaman event they held at an aquarium, and he'll know the address, he'll know the date, he'll know who was there. It's fantastic. But let's play that clip. It'll give everyone a really good idea of how things started.
You know, I have a couple of stories about the launch of the magazine, actually, which was, of course, heavily tied into the launch of the console. But I don't know whether you want to hear that. But
definitely. I was wondering, how early did you start working on it? I know definitely the console wasn't released, but
it felt like too late.
Yeah.
It felt like I feel like we started working on the magazine like 10 minutes before the thing launched, and it was kind of like you need to do a magazine. But I guess it must have been when did issue 0? We got issue 0 out for E3, right? So that would have been June. So that black issue with Sonic on the front, sort of that repeating dummy issue that had like, was it 16 or 32 pages repeating dummy issue? And
32 pages, June 1999.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, we were a good like 4 months ahead then, right? We must have been of the launch. 3 months, 4 months. So yeah, so we had that time. But my abiding memory of that actually is the struggle to launch it, to get ready for the launch, to figure out a design for the magazine, to get a team together, assembled, even just our office space. And I actually remember one of my bosses. I feel like I had like 10 bosses at that point, but I seem to remember my boss taking me into a room at Imagine Media, as it was then. It's now Future US, of course. And, it was pretty open plan, the office, apart from this one space, which had doors and a ceiling. And it was kind of like, okay, we have our own private space here. And this was kind of a space that was hallowed ground because magazines had launched from here and been successful. I remember my boss taking me in there and showing me this empty room with all these empty desks. And he says, this is going to be your space to launch the magazine out of. And I was really happy about that because it meant we could play loud music and play games. And I was really into dance music at the time. So I could play my music without annoying everybody, which was great. And he said to me, Simon, no magazine that's ever launched out of this room has ever failed. Don't fuck it up. And I'll never forget that because it was kind of like, hey, here's the good news, you've got this room. Here's the bad news, I'm watching you.
Oh wow!
And it was sort of it was a really high pressure situation. We didn't have a team together at that point, and we actually had quite a high profile member of another magazine come over to work with us. And I was really happy to get this person, and a critical juncture during the production of the magazine, this person left, kind of bailed, and it made things very, very difficult. It made the launch very, very difficult, and we didn't have a design either. We had to panic 2 weeks from launch of the first issue and just copy a design from a magazine from the UK that was part of our sort of sister magazines from the UK. So it was a real nightmare of a launch. Really enjoyable, but I mean there were some real scrapes going on there. I mean we had to put a design together for a magazine in no time, in 3 days I think. Yeah.
I don't remember any of this, weirdly. Only because I think I was just too busy playing SEGA Bass Fishing.
When did you come on the magazine, Fran?
I was there from the very beginning, right?
Yep.
Simon? I mean, maybe not from when you were brought down into the room and given the talk by the bosses, by the overlords, but I mean, I think I was there from issue 0 on.
Yeah, I definitely see your picture in here.
Oh, God.
Don't worry, I'm not going to post
Oh,
it.
God. But yeah, I think I was there from the very beginning. I was in that small, tiny room for a while, and I think I saw all the iterations of the staff from there on out, and all the way until the magazine closed. So
yeah, you hung in there.
that's my superpower, hanging in there.
Superpower is survival. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. But it was it was pretty brutal. I think you probably just had headphones on, listening to music and doing your job while I was leaning over the shoulder of our designer, driving him mental, trying to get the magazine to look the way that we wanted it to look. But that was pretty rough, actually. It was a really tough last minute launch, and I remember issue 0 going to SEGA to present the plan for issue 0 to Bernie Stoller.
Oh wow!
Right? Yeah, and Bernie's a tough cookie, right? I mean, that's one way of putting it, and I'll leave it at that. And we went to SEGA to present issue 0 to him, and we kind of got into a bit of a fight, him and I. We had this big meeting, and it was kind of like this big mafia meeting. It was Bernie Stoller and his lieutenants around this huge table, and they sort of came mob-handed. There were 10 of them around this table. And I went with Jonathan Simpson-Bint and Matt Firm, who were my bosses at the time. And we went in there, and we were really proud of the work that we'd done so far on the magazine. And we got in there, and Bernie Stoller didn't like it. He didn't like the cover that we were planning to do for E3, and he didn't like the cover lines that I'd come up with either. And so Bernie used to work on the Village Voice. So he knows publishing, and so he decided that he could tell us how we should do it. And I wasn't very amused by that, and told him that I was the editor-in-chief, and that we were going to do it the way I wanted to do it, or not at all.
Nice.
And there was this silence in the room, And he went a little bit red-faced, actually, and I could see that I'd made the wrong move totally. Like, this is not the guy that you say that kind of thing to. And I was really full of myself, I think. I just thought, yeah, we're doing it my way, you know.
Oh, that's youth. That's
yeah,
youth.
exactly. And he just got up. He stood up, and he said, no, you effing won't. You'll do it like I effing want you to. It was just like... And then Jonathan Simpson got up, my boss, and said, hey, we just need to calm things down a little bit here. And it became this kind of thing. And, it was a frosty meeting, and it ended shortly afterwards. And I remember my boss sort of saying to me, well, you handled that well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, sorry. I was looking at your intro to the issue 0, and you definitely push that aspect really hard. You say you're official, and then you say, oh, so we can't say what we want, right? Wrong. This magazine carries the official license because that's the best way to give you, the reader, the best value of every issue. But you also note that you are still licensed or independent in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was. I mean, Fran, maybe you'd agree, but like, I think we were kind of known for giving Sega. We loved the Dreamcast, we loved the system, we loved Sega, but we didn't hesitate to criticize them on occasion, right, Fran? I mean, I feel like
I look back at like our reviews in that issue, in all the issues, and I'm always surprised because I'm like, wow, we scored some of these games really low. I mean, I remember some of the reviews I did, I was like, wow. For an official magazine, we were pretty brutally honest.
So we just heard some very early memories of how the official Dreamcast magazine came about. They had a really sick office, at least that's how Simon felt about it.
Right.
And it seems like they were really in a lot of crunch time. Do you own issue 0? Have you ever taken a look at it?
I have not. That's the only one I've never owned. I owned the first one and all of them, but I've never owned 0. So I don't know what's in it. Is it anything good? Because in the audio, as you heard, he says they kind of rushed it out the door. So was it just kind of like a small preview of what's to come?
It's interesting because it's very clear that they did rush this, because the biggest red flag for me is you open it up, beautiful welcome page with the writers, the writing team, but then you finish the magazine, it's the same spread. That's a misprint.
Right, for sure.
And I don't know why they have the welcome twice, but it really just has like an overview of Sonic Adventure. It has a page showcasing all of the accessories and hardware. You can tell they were really trying to fill space because there's just the big swirl eye on the back, which looks cool, but like
you know what? I think I'm one of the, like, gonna make a hot take, but I hated some of those like launch Dreamcast ads because I feel like they should have focused more on the gameplay. Because the Dreamcast had so advanced gameplay, but they focus on like an eye, or it's thinking, but just like a crazy looking person or something. And
it was kind of a marketing carryover from the American Saturn era, which I think made some really poor decisions.
I mean, Bernie was still there, like they said in the clip, right?
Right. I never found much of the American Saturn advertising to be like memorable or catchy. Like I think it's kind of stupid or gross at times. And like this one, like the weird like body manipulation logos in your eyes and on your skin and stuff. It's very like 90s. I don't know why they were into that. There is a cool spread in this too, where it covers the launches in Japan and Europe. That
was my favorite stuff from those magazines, was like the Japanese stuff we would never get here. Like knowing, like, I like the one where they did I think it was either them or EGM that went in line when they released Skies of Arcadia or Internals. What is it? Internals Arcadia or whatever.
Eternal Arcadia
in Japan. I thought that was pretty cool.
The producer of Blue Stinger has an interview. Look at how sweaty he is.
Oh man, of course. I mean, the game is kind of a sweaty game, you know.
There's also a Shenmue preview with a screen you don't see too often of Shenhua, like a very weird early one.
Oh yeah, it was weird because it always felt like the first game should have been way longer because of all the stills they used to show.
Well, remember we did our Shenmue spin-offs one, and like there's a weird ceremonial headdress she wears for like the apocalypse, and you're like, oh, that never happened. Or, it hasn't yet.
Yeah, exactly. Not yet.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I wouldn't feel bad with not owning it. It's very short. It's only 32 pages.
And what's this pictures you put on? Oh, this is from the first magazine. Sorry, I'm looking at the 2 pictures you put in the images. I thought it was the Zero issue.
So let's jump ahead to issue 1 because that's where things really kicked off. Like as Simon said, like they used a template from like a European magazine that their parent company owned. Like it was real.
Was it the same
sloppy
cover, like or just for the first one? Okay,
like the layout for issue 0, yeah, was.
Oh yeah, because when you see the first one and the 0, they're totally different fonts. It's not even the official Dreamcast font. It's just like it looks like a random font.
It's just chunky font with like weird letter spacing. But issue 1, that's where things kicked off. It released just a few weeks before 9/9/99, and of course featured Sonic on the cover. What do you think about them doing Sonic on issue 0 and issue 1? You think you just had to do that?
Yeah, because I mean, at this point, it was kind of like 5 years that Sonic hasn't really had a big game. It was a big deal when Sonic Adventure was back, basically. And I know a lot of people like to hate on the game because they say it aged poorly. But it was a big deal, and it got high scores back then. It was literally like highly rated and regarded game.
Oh, I found my envelope. There's my... It's just like an envelope that I kept.
You're not going to turn it in for renewal?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I could renew it. But, yeah, so issue 1, like I said, it released just a few weeks before 9/9/99. Being the debut issue, the hardware and peripherals got the spotlight. They talked about a zip storage device that never actually happened. Nope. Interestingly, the Neo Geo Pocket Color gets talked about, and they say that because of the linking capabilities, they will have Neo Geo Pocket Color game reviews in future issues. And I believe they did do that. It didn't take up too much space, but that always made me go like, oh, I guess that's the handheld for the Dreamcast, even though it's not from Sega. That's weird.
I wanted it, though, because they sold me on it. I was like, imagine what you could do. Like, VMU's cool, but imagine having the VMU games in full color on the go. But,
yeah, no. I mean, they sold me on it, too. It took me like 20 years to actually buy one.
Oh.
But we could go on, but for this issue, I want to highlight an interview with Yuji Naka, which called him the Sonic Boom Boy, and I just had to show the page.
Boom Boy.
I don't know if it shows. Look at this. They used metallic ink on his interview. It's like a silver ink. Isn't that wild?
It's a big deal interview.
Yeah, and so I get a kick. I mean, just layout-wise, I get a kick out of seeing all these little like Yuji Nakas standing around like he's Mr. Bean.
Yeah, like that's what I'm wondering. Like, did they get him in the office and they're all okay? Pose over here and pose over here, and they're taking full shots. Like what?
But you know, I feel like we like Yuji Naka on this show. It's not like we're close friends with him and we work with him, so we don't have to put up with his nonsense. So it's like, okay, so he's hard to work with, but we've never worked with him, so I don't care. He follows us on Twitter. That's all I want.
Right. Don't call him a felon or anything.
I get such a kick out of these pictures because it's very clear that he had a big ego. And I think when he was like, oh, I get a photo shoot and I get my picture in like 6 times in 2 pages. Yeah, and they call me Sonic Boom Boy. Let's do it. And so they do interview him. I won't read the thing, but I'll read the first question. They said, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And he said, when I was a child, there were many typical things, like a train conductor, an airline pilot, or an astronaut. I didn't think about making games at all. I realized I wanted to make games when I was in the 3rd grade in high school, 17 to 18 years old. I applied to a game school in order to be able to come to Tokyo. I am originally from Osaka, and I stayed there until I was 18 years old. Then I came to Tokyo. He's just like listing his ages. It's kind of boring.
Okay, so like my thing with this whole thing, it kind of reminds me of these like guru guys sometimes where you know they're BSing a little bit. It's like when we were in 3rd grade, I don't think we were like, I'm gonna apply to game school. What is even game school? Did they even have that?
Right.
Do they even have that now when you're in 3rd grade? Like, I don't know. Sorry, Yuji. I'm not trying to call you a liar, but game school, what's that?
Yeah. I don't know.
I wanted to go to cloud college.
It's a fun interview, though. It's fun. It's cool that I think they got a lot of big name Sega developers to sit down and talk with them.
Oh yeah, that's the most interesting bits of the magazines. Is the behind the scenes they give you. They take the
exactly. And it's funny. The last question they say, finally, is Knights 2 heading for Dreamcast?
No.
And he says, yes, I was asked about this by many fans during this year's E3. Even Nintendo's Mr. Miyamoto asked me if I was making it, but it's also enjoyable to work on brand new titles, maybe even more so than games from existing series. And it's like, dude, you just talked about Sonic Adventure.
but I will give him this. At this time, he was making some weird one-off games that we haven't heard of at the time. Like he was doing Choo Choo Rocket, Samba. I don't know if he worked on Samba, but Phantasy Star Online. They had man, Sonic Team was crazy during this era, but
absolutely
Sonic Adventure
and Sonic Boom Boy was the one behind it all.
Thank you, Sonic Boom Boy.
Moving on to issue 2, this released October 1999 and featured Soul Calibur on the cover. The magazine promised every fighting game released at the time rated, so they said what the best one was to the worst. And it featured a preview of Yu Suzuki's F355 Challenge, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Sega did not publish, right?
Not in America. I think Acclaim published it.
Why?
Because Sega is weird. I don't know. That's a good question to ask. I wish we could get Peter Moore on one day, an interview with him, and be like, "Why? Why didn't you do this?"
It's you'll put all these other weird racing games on there, but a Yu Suzuki one, no, not good enough. No, not good enough for us.
Especially when you were branding him as a rock star at this time with his signature on games.
Right.
I will say about this cover, I like that they use a female character, which was not usually with fighting games they use one of the main male characters. So I like that. I like the color scheme. She fits really good with the red. Good cover.
It's a beautiful cover, and the article I really want to call attention to because it's something I usually wouldn't talk about. NFL 2K. It's their review area was called Test Zone, which I always felt like should be a name for the previews because you're not testing them, you're reviewing them. But yeah, so this gives you a really good idea of what a typical Dreamcast magazine review looks like, especially for a headlining title. And I'll be honest, I was on Team Dreamcast, so any win was a win, even if it was a game I was not into.
Right.
And they were very close to selling me on NFL 2K because I was like, man, this looks amazing. I don't even like watching football, but it looks like a TV show come to life. And also because the Vikings were on the cover. What was that? Randy Moss? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This game was interesting. It was actually really good. I played it. The only negative I'll say is that if you wanted to play career mode, it took the whole memory card, 200 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Negative. They should have been 10 blocks. What is this? Come on, man. I think, in my opinion, they just wanted to make a bunch of money off of mainstream audiences. They're gotta have 4 VMUs to have 4 different career modes.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. And despite being a 2-page spread, it's a very short review.
Right.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs maybe, and they're short too. But then at
football.
the end, you get your pluses and minuses, you get your summary, and then you get the coveted number, which 9 out of 10 I think is very nice. And then the Dream Game Award, which I always wondered if they sent a physical reward to the studio.
Probably
Wish we
not.
would have asked that.
I know.
But there are cool little bits. I like the little info panels in the corner. Tells you the publisher, the genre, if it's online, which they said nope. Which I forgot that the original NFL 2K was not online, right?
2K1 was the first one.
That's right.
Yeah.
VMU page count, they say 8+, which I think is the minimal. It really should say the max because that would make you go, oh, I need a dedicated VMU for this. But yeah, so that's just giving everyone an idea of how they handled reviews. I thought they were fair. I thought for the most part they really do a good job describing the game. I think the screenshots are always fantastic in this magazine.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I really have no complaints about how they handled reviews outside of Francesca giving Seaman, I think, a 6 out of 10, which she said she got a lot of grief for.
Oh.
SEGA didn't like that. They were like, really? You don't want to give it maybe an 8?
They're like, you're going to be on the wrong side of history, just letting you know.
Right. I know. And in fact, off topic, there is a guy that made a 3D printed Seaman that like has the game running through him, and he like talks to you. Tank.
So he kind of, the game's playing and the animatronic character that looks like Seaman talks when the game talks?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's weird,
scary.
right? Like that is scary. Moving on to issue 3 now. Or issue 2, right? Yeah.
3, right?
No, issue 3. Issue 3.
Yeah.
Issue 3 released in December 1999, which makes it the holiday issue. The cover spotlighted Dead or Alive 2, an interesting choice to focus on another fighting game gal rather than, say, like Sonic again or NFL 2K. In fact, it was kind of, they really strayed away from sports. And I think after talking to Simon, who's a Brit and he's into like Japan culture and like techno music and house music, like it's clear this guy was not big into sports, so I could see why he's not like put football players on the cover. Meanwhile, the unofficial Xbox magazine or Dreamcast magazine, which only ran 4 issues, had 2 football covers and 1 Tony Hawk cover. So it's clear they were trying to like be the sports magazine, but still. Resident Evil Code Veronica got an extensive preview along with Crazy Taxi. And imagine Crazy Taxi being new. Now it just feels like we've lived with it for decades. But like, imagine being like, oh, what's this? Let's read about. And that's really what's so much fun about paging through these magazines is to see people talk about like stuff that we just take for granted now, like Jet Set Radio and Shenmue.
That annoying song in the background that's on repeat. No, dude, this is going to be legendary. This Offspring song is going to be baked into...
Like, look at this. Like, Jet Set Radio is like, oh, next issue we'll talk about this weird game. And, like, this is all you get. And you're like, what is that? It looks like a cartoon.
Right.
Wow, very cool. But, yeah, so this issue also had a report from the Tokyo Game Show, an interview with Tetsuya Mitsuguchi, which Simon, I believe, was actually friends with. Maybe, I don't know. They it seems like they were kind of buddy.
That dude, that's the dude that made the new Tetris game. That's really good.
Oh, really?
Like, Connect or whatever. Isn't his company Embrace the same guys that did Rez?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Okay. I didn't know. But my highlight for this issue is from the Holiday Shopping Guide.
Oh, I love those.
Which has a section called You Asked For, But You Got. So let's take a look at that. It's a little silly.
Right.
And what it is, it's talking about gifts, Dreamcast gifts that you asked for, and then gifts that your like family member who doesn't really understand Dreamcast got you. So the first one is a Dreamcast Astropad.
Nobody wants the Astropad. Sorry, it's poop. It's diarrhea.
I don't even own one.
Angry video game words right here. It's what it is. Yeah. I remember, man, I don't want to say, my friend had one and they were cheap. They were like, I think $15. So like if you couldn't afford a official one that was $30, you would get this monstrosity.
They were big like dinner plates and felt hollow. Ugh. Which
horrible
is a very
joystick, even worse than the.
But the good news is, George, you asked for a Dreamcast Astropad, your grandma got you a Dream Camp Astrobed.
I think
self-inflating roll mattress.
Imagine, I could sleep anywhere. I could be homeless or an outside wilderness explorer, suburb explorer.
The next one, you asked for the game TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat, and I got some good news for you as well.
What?
Uncle Ernie got you a rough and ready hardcore heat video with some pretty naked women on it. So it looks like you got some porn.
Yeah, if my uncle gave me porn, I'd be like, "Sir, I'm 12." Okay.
Next up, you asked for a Starfire light blaster light gun, and unfortunately, you got a Starbucks chubby mug.
I've never heard of that. I bet you it's worth a lot.
It looks kind of cool. It looks like you're drinking out of a mini coffee pot. I kind of like it. The next two we have going here. So Trick Style is what you wanted, but unfortunately you got Slick Style, a hair gel.
Oh, and it has like flock of seagulls on there.
It does.
Yeah.
The last one, you asked for Mortal Kombat Gold, and oh no, guess what you got?
Mortal Kombat Gold.
Yeah, so there you go. So I always like the holiday gift guides.
Me too.
I think they did 2 of them because they were like 8 or 10 pages long. It was little grab bag articles like quizzes and silly things like this, but it had a lot of fun personality. It's still, I think honestly, it was Sega telling them you need to promote this stuff,
right?
And they were like, "All right, well, we'll do it our way."
Whoever told them to do the Astro Pad, I'm sorry, guys, but no.
I didn't call it out, but there is a section, I don't know if it's this guide or somewhere else, where they shit talk like old Sega stuff, and they claim that Colibri is like a bad game, which is surprising.
I could see it because it's like directionalist. Some people would give up on it easily, and I could see that for those type of games.
Right.
But I think they aged more appropriately with a cult fan base. But
Yeah.
I was going to say, they had this one holiday-ish, I don't know if you're going to put it in here, but the one that has the poem with Quake and everything.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
that's the one that's the most memorable, I think, to me in the holiday ones, is that one. Because I remember it vividly and reading the thing and being like, I never thought you would put a poem in a gaming magazine in this weird thing and promote all these games. It was weird, I thought. Interesting.
Yeah, and you know, I feel like that kind of goes back to when Sega Bits was in its early years, and we just like wanted to. There was a time when we were like, we need to post every day. We need an article every day, and so we would be like, well, what do we do? And so I don't know if it was because of Dreamcast Magazine, but I feel like we would do like some little off the wall things, especially, and I think it also kind of was a very bloggy thing to do at the time,
right?
Where it would just be like, I went on a trip and I saw something vaguely Dreamcast related, and I took a picture, and it became a whole article.
There was also that Resistance UK type of humor at the time, way back in the early 2000s, that also kind of influenced the Sega culture with the Outrun and all his like, oh, I saw a guy that vaguely looks like an Outrun, or I saw a Ferrari in the wild, so I made a blog post about it. Yeah.
The next issue we are going to be talking about is issue 4. This is a beautiful one. I have it here.
This is one of the best.
Metallic silver paint, or ink, I mean,
right,
on the cover. This is, I think, one of my favorite covers.
Right.
I love
very 70s.
It's so dated. It's like it looks like a product of its time,
for sure.
And so I think it's fitting too that because we have a cover with metallic ink, that we have another audio clip here.
Show that back cover real quick.
Oh yeah,
show it.
JoJo.
Yeah, rare game right there, guys. So if you see that in the wild, pick it up. $300.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it's
great
a really
ad,
weird ad.
It's a really nice ad. It's colorful, nice.
Yeah, it is. This issue, it came out in the year 2000. It kicked off the year 2000 in style with a cover featuring Ooh La La in metallic ink. The design of official Dreamcast magazine is worth learning about, and thankfully Simon went into all the details. I think you actually asked him the question. So let's jump back to 2013 when we spoke to Simon, Francesca, and all about magazine design.
I actually had a question about the magazine design, because I remember when I started getting them, I always kind of liked the idea that it was bigger, but it also looked weird when you put them in your shelves. So like, was that design like the bigger cover, and like you guys always used, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like the covers always had like a really like attractive color scheme.
Metallic paint too.
Yeah,
a lot of metallic
paint. Yeah, it was like, it felt like a premium magazine. Was that like
that-
on purpose?
Oh yeah. I mean, I fought tooth and nail for that kind of stuff. As Fran knows, I was pretty. I was very into design at the time, and I had an amazing design team working with me, with Dave and Dan, and we sort of convinced Imagine, to do the most high quality thing possible. I mean, it had an amazing quality of cover. And the bag was great, and we had these fifth colors, we call them, which is the silvers or the bright orange. These are called fifth colors because on a printing press you normally have 4, and you have to pay extra if you want, silver or bright orange. And it.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second, Simon, and this is total insider baseball, but going through old issues of Dreamcast Mag, I'm like, was he high? How did he get a fucking fifth color in the run of book pages in this magazine? That must have cost a fortune. I was like, that's crazy, because there's like silver in there, and then I remember there's like a fluoro pink.
I think I think part of how, so I was an untested EIC when I got that job, and I think part of how Imagine sold me to Sega as the EIC was that I had been on Edge and Next Generation, and these, and I would bring this sort of, I don't know, this kind of vibe from those, which were very high quality magazines, right? And that this was going to be done to that standard. I think that's what Imagine went to Sega with. That's how they got it, that deal.
You were going to bring the classy.
Yeah, we were going to spend on this thing. The way that we have done with Edge in the UK, and by the way, Sega, the way that we've done with Next Generation. So we're going to do a great job with this. And then it was kind of like, okay, Simon, go to town. And I did, and then it was kind of like, and I remember Dan and Dave like sitting down with them, and we'd come up with these great ideas for features, and it was just, I mean, it was so much fun because we had this. I remember other magazines being kind of jealous actually that we had this bigger format. It was a wide format magazine. We had fifth colors. We had. It was kind of, they really splashed out on it, really. I feel like Imagine did right by the Sega Dreamcast magazine in terms of quality. Yeah.
It really was a beautiful magazine, and the only other stuff I've got in my collection that comes close is Next Gen. Like the first run before they changed paper stock, and it kind of went,
that would have been funny if Sega had said to them, wait, you mean the current Next Gen, or do you mean the old Next Gen? Which quality?
Oh, poor Next Gen.
All right, so there we had it. A little information about how they found new colors to include in magazines. I
never thought of that though. Like the idea that if you put another color, like a fifth color. I mean, now I know because I actually took printmaking, but like. I never did magazine stuff, so I didn't know in magazines. Right. Obviously, especially when we did this interview, and I was surprised. I thought it was interesting that they went, but like you noticed it. It actually did make an impact because I asked about it, and it made an impact to me enough for me to have a question about it. Right, so many years later.
Yeah. And, I feel like it might go hand in hand with Simon being British. If you've ever seen British magazines, they put a lot more effort into them. They even give, like, gifts with issues. They still do it. It's a very European thing to be like, oh, you get a handbag with this magazine.
We're uncultured. And so
we are uncultured. And so, I don't know, I feel like he was bringing a little bit of that. I think he was also bringing a little bit of, like... He was big into dance and house music, and I feel like a lot of the designs at that time were very innovative. They used a lot of cool printing techniques. I mean, the Designers Republic, who did the Wipeout games, also did a lot of house music at the time. And I've bought a few of the albums they've designed, and they very much look like the cover of issue 4 here.
Oh.
Now, going into issue 5, Capcom took over the cover with unique art of Falcon from...
Well, I was going to say, this is like the first cover that have 2 characters from 2 different games gracing.
Yeah, and it's the first one, too, with, I believe, original artwork, which looks really cool. I like it.
I thought the Ooh La La, was that official Sega artwork?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's official Sega artwork. I actually don't know who did the cover art. They don't have it listed, at least immediately. But Why are these two on the cover? Well, I'll tell you. So, Falcon from Power Stone 2 and Claire Redfield from Code Veronica, both games were previewed in this issue, and the magazine promised to explain Shenmue to us. They also rated Dead or Alive 2, and for some reason, Barry Bonds was highlighted. You see that in the corner there. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah. Did he do something criminal with a Dreamcast?
I think he did something great, because he was probably doing well at that time.
Oh.
But my focus for this issue is Dreamcast news bits happening at the time, and this is a section that they had in most, if not all, the issues, Dreamcast News Network.
Oh man,
and it was products. Just little tidbits of things happening. I always loved this section because sometimes it would have like maybe rumors. They said, as you know, in our old interview with them, that Sega was very forthcoming. So like, you know, I think if they were told that Jet Set Radio was coming west, they might tease it here.
Oh, yeah.
But like you can see here, they talk about Acclaim's lineup. They talk about stuff going on with Crave, Ubisoft, even like a Frogger game coming out. So it is very much like little rumors and tidbits. Activision published Virtualon in the US. Is that true? I didn't realize that.
They did. And this is another thing where it was like, why wouldn't Sega do it? And I feel like Virtualon's kind of not popular in America at all. Like, if Sega wouldn't even do this... I mean, they did the Saturn one. I'm assuming it sold so bad, they're like, if you want to do it, Activision, go for it. Yeah. So, that sucks. I don't know. Have Americans ever been into big mechs?
Never.
That's what I'm saying. So, sorry. What do you think about the camera in this? These sexy hardware.
Oh, that got me so excited because, as you can see here, they talk about sexy new hardware. There is a Sega and Swatch collaboration. I don't know if this ever happened.
I think maybe the Swatch happened in Japan, right? Didn't they have like a store where it was all connected? I think we talked about it in an episode. I forgot.
Yeah. Something about the you can connect the watch to the Dreamcast network, and then like
bank or something like that. It was something weird.
Or like tickets for events can like be put on your watch. There's one here that I always was interested in. It's the Visual Memory Plug-in module, which allows the Dreamcast to display the Swatch on screen. So I don't know if that ever happened, but it looks like a little like a little saucer on the top of a VMU. It's very strange.
They were doing really weird hardware. I wonder how much money they spent just like working on like a camera that looks like a toy. Like that was my thing I didn't like about the camera, was how it looked like a weird toy.
I got it right behind me there.
I didn't like the design. It wasn't as slick as the hardware of the Dreamcast. It kind of looked
That's true.
But it does. I guess it does have its own like charm, but it is very toy-like. You know what I'm saying?
It is. Yeah. It feels like something Sega Toys developed. And then the last little bit here is Morolean Television. I'll read this part. So, ooh la la, it's MTV. In a campaign to popularize its hit game, Space Channel 5, and Lovely Lady Ooh La La, Sega and MTV are talking over... I think taking over?
It's taking over. Well, maybe it says talking as a, like, pun.
Are talking over Ooh La La's new career as an MTV... Oh, they're, like, speaking about it as an MTV VJ. And no craptacular live-action stand-ins for this vixen. Sega has approached super mega media veterans who did CG work on Square's Final Fantasy movie to bring their girl to fully rendered glory. This never happened, but imagine if I guess it would be like Toonami with Tom, but it would be a CG Ooh La La kicking off music videos in MTV. That would have been epic.
I feel like that was the plan for the character, to make her like a Hatsune Miku before Hatsune Miku and Vocaloids were that big, because they talked about her being like a real life mascot, and them designing her like she was a real person in a way with costumes and wardrobe. So
Right.
It would have been interesting.
Right.
I do know that they did like a Hollywood Walk of Fame kind of thing with her, and they had a bunch of pictures. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we actually discussed that in a little bit.
Yeah.
That'll be
Okay.
exciting. So moving on to issue 6. Issue 6, it was bittersweet. It was Simon's last issue. They didn't announce his departure until the next one, I believe. But this was the last time he worked on the magazine. Jet Set Radio made the cover, again, with unique artwork. What do you think about this art?
This is a really good in-your-face artwork, and it really tells you everything about Jet Set Radio. The spray can, the smiling beat, pointing in your face. The color scheme was great. I really like it makes you read what's on the can, and it's right. It's a steal. Sega.com delivers online gaming for real and super fast network. Remember when they did this whole thing where they gave you $200 cash back?
Yes. So that's another feater on here.
I knew a couple of friends that did it.
It's a really, I mean, I guess the equivalent now is where you pay monthly for Xbox, and then they give you the Series X or Series S.
They do it with cell phones a lot now too, where you trade in your old phone, you get like $800 off, but you have to be on the network for 3 years. Or something.
Yeah, I mean, my phone was free.
Yeah.
I pay for it each month,
Right.
but then that money is like subtracted.
Right.
The Jet Set Radio, I mean, I didn't put it in the notes, but the Jet Set Radio article is fantastic. You can read the whole thing at segabits.com. We did a little classic Sega magazine corner on it. I really love this issue too because it has a great Phantasy Star Online coverage, and a lot of online games get covered. And then there's a really great guide to like making your own VMU videos, and I remember utilizing this guide for like VMU resources.
What did you put on your VMU?
I animated Sonic fighting Eggman.
Oh,
I
won?
use Sonic always wins. But yeah, they talk about Dreamcast.planetweb.com where you could upload your videos, and some of them were, I mean, it's on here. Pikachu's death was one of them. It's Pikachu getting killed by Dragon Ball Z characters.
I don't know if my mom would have let me do that back then. So she would go through my VMU and look at what kind of video files I had. She's like, George, what's this one? Boobs? It's not what you think, Mom.
Yeah. Barry drew them.
Yeah,
I don't know him yet, but he drew them.
Yeah.
So let's listen to Simon's memories of his final days working on the Dreamcast magazine.
Issue 6 was Simon's final issue. They said they took down the, what was it? You had, the techno music was turned off.
The day the techno music died.
Yeah, and they said
died. Yeah,
it was a funny bit. He said the Union Jack has been lowered, the Moby posters have been torn down, the techno is officially off the turntable, and Simon's $1,200 Backsaver 2000 chair has gone with him into the great beyond known as Revolution.
Holy crap! That is so perfect.
Yeah, that kind of is so perfect. Yeah, 6 was the last issue. I think also that might have been, was that the Fight Club issue? That's when we did the big photo shoot with everyone covered in blood.
It could be. I'm seeing Power Stone 2 is one of the featured, and another Shenmue article I'm seeing.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, I didn't leave the magazine because I was like, oh crap, this thing's going down, get me out of here. I've never been that prescient, unfortunately, but I left to help out a new launch called Revolution, which was a dance music magazine that was a complete fucking disaster, actually, from start to finish. But so that was ill-advised. But I think at that point, things were still going strong and looked great, I think. And that first year was just wonderful. I mean, it really was. I mean, I think the year 2000 was awesome.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I think I was sort of long gone by the time it started to feel like the wheels were coming off, Fran, I think.
Yeah, because I came a little bit later, I think. I can't remember where the rumors came from or how it started coming about. I just knew that at some point they would, I just knew. I just don't remember how I knew. But
I think it was because of, there was the foreshadowing, but do you remember those weird events we started getting invited to?
Name the weird events, because that pretty much covers my whole career.
I remember being invited to a bunch of these odd tech events where they were talking about how the Dreamcast chip was going to be put in a set-top box, and a Dreamcast chip was going to be used in this. And, there were some familiar faces from, Sega of Japan that you knew and Sega of America, and it's like, why am I here? It's like, it's not game. They're like, oh, we want to include you because you've been covering Sega. And I'm like, okay. And it was a bunch of Games Press that would go, and we're like, huh. And then, so the weird thing was, Game Center, in the middle of the Dreamcast life, we actually got bought by... Oh, no, we bought, I think we bought Ziff. So CNET bought Ziff. Or not Ziff.
Was it Gamers.com or...
I can't... Well, either way, we were basically owned by the same company that owned GameSpot. And GameSpot's offices were in the Sega building. So...
Oh, wow.
So we moved, because we used to be on Townsend, kind of across from Pier 39, which, side story, was where they had like the Seaman event in the aquarium, which was super awkward.
I saw pictures of that.
That was awesome. We all went, and it's like, what in the hell is going on? But sure, why not? So then we moved to the Townsend building maybe about 6 months or so before Sega packed it in. So we were in the same building as them, and, I'd already had friends that worked there. And, everybody just started to have like a weird vibe. And you'd meet them for lunch, and I'm like, how's things? And they're like, fine. And you just kind of got this vibe, and then you got invited to those tech events. And if you guys remember, there was that leak, I think I think it was out of Australia, that it was 18-wheel Pro American Trucker and maybe Sega Rally were coming to PS2.
Man, I vaguely remember that.
Do you remember that? Because that's when everybody started to get really freaked out, because it's like, why are you licensing this Sega IP to your competitor? It's like, oh, it's totally not true. But, but then it's like, well, how come I hear Australian voices in the background? What's going on? They're like, it's fine. And then I remember, it was so weird to be in the building that day because I don't know how you guys found out, but I think it was either the afternoon before whatever day they announced it was, you got a pre-brief call. It's like, hey, are you free? Like at 4:30? And I was like, sure. And then, it was a call with Charlie and I think it was Charlie and Peter. It might have just been Charlie. And Charlie's like, hey, we're going to make an announcement. We're going third party. And I'm like, what? And, they kind of broke it down, and everybody was like, oh, my God.
I remember being very, very, very sad, because I think, I may not be super crazy diehard, like as far as my knowledge base, because I've forgotten more than I remember these days as far as like game names and stuff like that. But I was always... from when I was younger, I was always a Sega person. I didn't have a Super Nintendo because I could only pick one system at the time, and I had a Genesis.
Nice.
And then from there, I had, Sega CD, I had a Saturn, and everything like that. And so when I heard that they were getting out of the hardware, oh man, did I hate the PS2 so much.
Oh, yeah.
So you moved to Xbox, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is, the PS2 ended up being one of my favorite systems of all time as well, because there were so many good games on it. But at that time, oh my God, I hated Sony and PS2 so much. I don't ever care about those things at all. Like, I don't care about console wars. I just like games, And but at that time, I felt so personal.
Yeah.
Because I loved the teams so much. I from meeting so many of them and seeing so many of these amazing games, and thinking like, oh crap, what's going to happen to Panzer? What's going to happen to Jet Set? And what's going to happen to all these like franchises that I'd come to like absolutely love? How is like Sony going to treat them being on their system? And it felt like such a bitter like triumph for them to get these, to get the fruits of like Sega's labor, by effectively killing off their system. But then I regained sanity and it was okay. But yeah, I remember it being really sad, super sad at the time.
So sad that he departed. It's also equally sad that the magazine he went to like folded after one issue. It was a music magazine. and it's like I get you're into house music, dude, but maybe stick on for 6 more issues on Dreamcast magazine instead.
I mean, maybe he knew. He's like, the Dreamcast is going, but house music's forever.
Maybe, but it is interesting that, the first issue that he departs on, issue 7th, covers Tony Hawk 2 on the cover of their only real sports cover.
And it's weird.
For the issues.
It's really contrasting compared to the Jet Set Radio. Like, the art style, there's no cohesive. Yeah. They usually picked like a color from a character, and they kind of themed the whole cover over it, and this one is not like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and also the paper quality, it's a little lighter. I don't think they actually do any more. No, I'm wrong. They do silver ink a little later, but they do this new fold out ad situation, which makes the covers much lighter. They don't have that heavy cover anymore, so it feels a little cheaper. But at least they didn't shrink it down like I've seen some magazines do. And in fact, I clearly renewed because I have a renewal page missing here. And I even, they had stickers. So were stickers. I don't know what, just grab a sticker below, slap it on the card to the right for a full year of Dreamcast magazine. And I actually, at least here, took the stickers off because I put them on the backs of my VMUs. That's
a trick that keeps them out of business. If you put pay later, they would just send you one magazine for free. Yeah, and then they would get you the magazine, and then they would charge you. So I knew people that would pull that trick on different magazines.
Well, with this issue that you probably got for free, and now that's why they went out of business, Tony Hawk 2 got the spotlight. Mm-hmm. Alongside a first look, players could enjoy a demo of the first game, which I didn't realize Tony Hawk 1 and 2 released so quickly on the Dreamcast, but it makes sense. They were I think 1 was a little older, but it was a new port, and then 2 was already in the works, so it makes sense.
It was the best port at the time for consoles too.
It was, yeah, and so it makes sense that they would promote it like this. The new editor-in-chief, Chris Charla, took over the magazine, but it still feels like the ODCM we love. For this issue, I want to take a look at a very short feature on an Ooh La La lookalike
I knew it. Right when I saw the Ooh La Las, I'm like, we're going to be talking about Ooh La La cosplayers.
Oh, man.
I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is in the DC Direct Dreamcast News Network, one of my favorite features. Before we get to the Ooh La Las, let's just point out Headhunter had a mention here, and I remember seeing these, and I'm like, holy crap, this game looks good.
It does. It does. It's crazy.
And it is good. You can get it. I have the
European version,
the European release. Yeah, and it's a fantastic game. Some of the best video clips too. The way they compress the video, it looks really good. And so Cosmic Things is the title of it. It says pink wigs, paparazzi, red carpets, and little girls in littler skirts. Ugh.
That's
crowd buzz.
Fucked up use of the English language.
Crowds buzzed as 12 girls between 9 and 21 years old lined up to compete in Sega's Space Channel 5 Ooh La La lookalike contest. The winner would receive $500 and a Dreamcast, and all of the girls would get to meet Ooh La La herself, played by Kelly Preston. Although she isn't vying with Madonna for the really big dressing room quite yet, Space Channel 5's Ooh La La is indisputably a celebrity, and given the serious money that Sega has dropped to this end, it would be shocking if she wasn't labeled the next It Girl by her company handlers. It's clear from today's response that she is indeed it, along with this, that, and the other, to whole legions of fans. After an opening number featuring choreography lifted directly from the game, the contestants skipped on stage in homemade, self-ingenious replicas of Ooh La La's space age gear. They shook their moneymakers and fast, yuck, well, judges scored them. Remember, these are
kids,
9 to 21
I was
going
to say, hopefully they're talking about the adults when they're talking about
well, judges scored them on appearance, danceability, and enthusiasm. After a lengthy debate, Forrest Philbrick was named the winner. We got to find Forrest Philbrick. With crossover appeal and the ability to perform as a role model, Sega's words, Ooh La La is the perfect icon in the making.
After they said all that disgusting stuff, they're like, they're like, and this person's a role model after they shook their moneymakers for us.
Ooh La La is looking to appear on several MTV and commercial TV shows, and while these contracts have yet to be closed, we will bet that an epidemic of Ooh La La inspired dyed pink hairstyles sweeps middle schools from coast to coast in 6 months or less. That didn't happen, but
no.
I think this is. I mean, I think this is adorable. I would probably use that word instead.
I would use talk about how creative their costumes were, because some of these costumes are creative. It's funny that there's a girl that already has the yellow Ooh La La costume before the yellow Ooh La La costume was a thing. Did she have a yellow one?
The VR one, right?
Yeah, right. But besides that, I think events like these are cool. It really shows you early cosplaying, but it also shows you this weird sexualization with these old magazines a little bit. This definitely wouldn't fly now in a cosplaying contest, but yeah, I don't know. Product of its time.
It is kind of, yeah, it is, but it is what it is. So moving on to issue 8. So issue 8, it released November 2000. This was the big one. It was the review for Shenmue. And before we dive into the audio clip, I'm just flipping through the magazine here.
This one's awesome. Because
this is an awesome issue.
Because the cover, it was just like, oh, this is literally the game model on the magazine, and it was like so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, very impressive for the time.
They talked to Matt Hoffman about his BMX game. I do have my stickers.
Oh, nice.
A few of them intact here. You can see them there. So I'm not missing all my stickers. But yeah, there's a big feature on Half-Life, which, never came to be. There's a fantastic Shenmue article. It's like 6 or 8 pages long.
Right.
And they gave it a 10 out of 10, which, well deserved.
I actually, I don't know, sometimes I go back and I look at some of the graphics and the world they did. It definitely, at the time, graphically is a 10 out of 10 game. It's pretty incredible what they accomplished, but
look at this.
If you like simulators, definitely Shenmue.
Yeah, they have a preview for Skies of Arcadia. Outrigger is previewed as well.
A game that
lots of ads.
I actually kind of like Outrigger. I know a lot of people are down on it, or nobody really talks about it. It's not that bad of a game.
Street Fighter 3 Third Strike got 9 out of 10. It also received the Dream Game Award, which seems to be what you get when you're a 9 or a 10. Cannon Spike got a 7 out of 10.
That's actually pretty good for a game that is like Acid Flip. It's just artwork from other games even.
Sega GT received a 9 out of 10. So, I mean, the Dreamcast in a short span had some real bangers. D2 received a 7 out of 10, which, makes sense.
It's kind of low, but okay.
Get this, Jeremy McGrath Supercross 2000, 1 out of 10.
Oof.
The lowest rating I've ever seen from them. And
are we going to stand up for it? Are we going to stand up for the game?
What I really appreciate is they actually keep an archive of all their reviews at the end of the issue. So if you miss past issues or if you want to compare what's out there, it's sorted by genre, and then it's sorted alphabetically, and then anything that received a 9 or a 10 is in gold. And so I'm just going to let's listen now to recollections of the team talking about their hype and coverage for Shenmue.
One question I had for Francesca and Simon was, I noticed up until the release of Shenmue, you guys wrote about it in every single issue. Was that something mandated by Sega, or was it you really saw something in the game and wanted to report on it and were excited about it?
Did we really write about it in every issue?
Every issue, there's a preview, either 1 page, 2 page. It gets bigger and bigger as the release looms. And then you got the front cover of issue 8. Shenmue, greatest game ever? ? Exclusive review. So
It was tremendously exciting what they were doing with that, and for a long time it was Virtua Fighter RPG, right? Kind of. I mean, that's,
Project Berkeley.
yeah.
So there was all this mystique, I think, around it, and this feeling that we were going to have an adventure game with RPG elements, and then when you go to fight someone, it's like Virtua Fighter. We were kind of like, wow, that sounds absolutely incredible. And it turned out to be a classic, obviously, but I didn't know we covered every issue.
I didn't either.
Yeah, even the issue 0, I believe it has a mention.
Oh, wow. I just remember, like, I mean, kind of going back to the first point and what Ricardo was talking about with Sega in Japan, it was, I mean, Dreamcast was, and this is going to be getting kind of like teary-eyed over it, but aside from like the press relations with the PR and stuff like that, I think Sega Japan was undergoing like this amazing, like, kind of like change. I mean, they were treating their internal studios like independent developers, you know, with like United Game Artists, Smilebit, you know, and all these different studios. Yeah, and all these different studios were kind of, you know, being let off the leash to some degree, and kind of encouraged to just kind of follow their muse, you know. So, I mean, that's how you got stuff like Jet Set Radio, and that's how you got stuff like Shenmue, and that's, you know, it's kind of like it was like a really creative time for them on the system. And maybe even just slightly after, because we saw things like, I know Rez was on Dreamcast. There was a version on Dreamcast, but even slightly after, like once they went multi-platform, there was still a little bit of that in them, you know, and stuff. And that was just a very, like, not to be super like precious about it, but it was a very like special time in like game development for like a first party manufacturer / publisher / developer to kind of be that crazy creative and let their teams kind of follow their bliss was really different at the time. And also you got these wildly creative games. That's how you got Samba Dandy Go. That's how you got these really like kind of out of left field ideas for games. Not all of them were great. You know, a lot of them, maybe they were made to kind of exploit different peripherals, like with Seaman with the microphone and everything. And maybe there was a directive in that, but what the teams actually did with each of those directives was kind of what you don't really see much of anymore. Yeah. You know, it's much more calculated now, and that's, you know, that's okay. That's because it's a business and it's kind of grown up. But I mean, back then it was just sort of like everyone was younger, the future was wide open. And so in a way, I think a lot of people look to Dreamcast as this kind of peak of creativity in the game space, but they can never really articulate it. And it was also kind of like this pinnacle of Japanese development at that time, where before things started turning more towards like sharing it with Western development and stuff as far as on consoles. I know you got stuff like Half-Life and Quake and stuff on the Dreamcast, but it was still very dominated by Japanese developers, you know, and Japanese developed games. So, but there was a definite shift in the culture of game development after the Dreamcast went away. That probably continues to now. So.
Yeah, I always say the Dreamcast was the canary in the gas mine, because when it went down, games changed forever, and I will be all precious about it, you know, because I think we never saw games like that before, and we really haven't seen games like that since. That were, I mean, there's been some really neat stuff, and we're seeing a lot of really unique and interesting stuff in the indie space right now. But, you know, their hands are kind of tied by their budgets and what they can do. So it's the indie stuff is very much fueled by imagination and creativity, which is great. They just don't always have the budget to polish it up. But, you know, like Fran said, you know, these guys were doing kind of like, at that time, indie level ideas that were getting big budget treatment and just being incredible. Like, I mean, Space Channel 5, I mean, if it was done right now, I mean, you could do that with like pixel art and like, you know, some colored sprites, and it would still be great.
Yeah.
But to get that level of polish and to make it look the way that it did, was, I mean, you just don't see stuff like that anymore because no publisher will take that chance or developer.
So there you have it. Shenmue was I feel like they didn't realize how hyped they were at the time, but they were covering the game in every issue.
Yeah,
which is just so funny that they didn't realize that themselves. It's like, yeah, you couldn't go one issue of Dreamcast magazine without being like teased. Another preview of Shenmue,
right? Or like teased, like, well, what is this? And it was always like, we'll explain everything, and then they gave you a little bit, but you had more questions, and then you're like, well, I have to get it next time.
They'd be like, you can drink soda, and you're like, oh, wow. What? And then the next issue is like, you can go inside people's houses, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
There's magic weather. What? And so I feel like SEGA was drip feeding them with information, and they were getting as hyped. And so it was a really, like, I don't know, it was fun living through them, because they clearly were excited, and they got us excited, and it built to this crescendo of the Shenmue review, because there was never a Shenmue demo on the demo disc. There was just a video.
Right. We didn't get the What's Shenmue demo.
No, we didn't. It was a video where they were like, it's not an RPG. It's not a movie. And
it's
me and my friends...
Right?
Me and my... Free.
Free, there you go.
And me and my friends would always latch onto that, and we'd be like talking about something unrelated. And then if someone had a question about it, we'd go, it's not an RPG. It's not a movie. It's like, what is it? Issue 9 now. Issue 9 focused on online gaming and gave Unreal Tournament the cover, showing an in-game model. And if you heard, I don't know if it was in the clips, but Fran talks a little shit on magazines putting like in-game models on the cover, because she's like, we thought it looked so good, and I'm like, I don't know, it does look good, doesn't it?
I think that one looks pretty fine. I mean, obviously it's aged badly considering the new games, but yeah, for the time, I think it's fine. I think some of the Saturn covers that had the fake CGI are a lot worse. I think the Shenmue one works a lot better because of the art style of the game really lends itself for those close-up shots. But this one's not that bad either. But it's weird that they chose Unreal Tournament to sponsor over Jet Set Radio again. Maybe even NFL 2K1 would have been good since it's an online game.
Now here's a mystery, George. Here's a mystery. They had a sticker in here, and I don't know what it was, but it looks like it was a circular sticker that was supposed to go on like the lid of your Dreamcast, maybe?
I don't know.
But I don't know what it was. I don't think it was Sonic or anything, though. Jet Set Radio was reviewed in this issue. It earned a perfect 10, as it should.
Of course.
Phantasy Star Online was previewed, and Skies of Arcadia graced the demo disc. And I know we're not talking demo discs on this, mainly because, and they told us in our interview that they had nothing to do with the demo disc. That was Sega's doing. Sega would just tell them what was on the disc. They had no say, which kind of stinks, because they really were hoping to maybe have some of the like articles bleed into the demo disc, maybe have videos of them in their offices.
It would have been great to have like video interviews and like vlogs style, kind of like a GD-ROM where like it was just interviews and stuff they did for that 2 months.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that they never did, because they teased it but never actually did it. VMU save files. Like, I'm surprised they didn't stick like exclusive chow on the demo discs or anything like that. The only thing I can think of is Xbox did that with Toe Jam and Earl, where I think if you put the Xbox demo disc in, it would give you a file that like unlocked something in the game. I could be wrong, but they did try to do that there. But for issue 9, I thought it was high time that we talk about the letters section. So the letters section kicked off every issue. D-mail, it was called.
D-mail. Sounds
D-mail.
Delicious.
Yeah, you get D-mail in the mail. Interestingly, they actually lists people's email addresses.
Oh, you'd be emailing everyone to interview them for the episode?
That would be interesting if I could email some of these people. But they actually got like pretty real with some of these. I didn't feature this one, but there was one letter where they were saying that Crazy Taxi was racist.
Wow.
And they didn't like how it depicted black people with BD Joe. And Dreamcast magazine straight up was like, yeah, it was offensive and we didn't like it. And I'm like, whoa.
And he's kind of like one of the most popular characters now, I think. Like a lot of people.
He was in a game just like 10 years ago. He was in the racing game, but
I would say his very southern name. I don't know if it's racist. I'm wondering. Do you think? I thought all the characters were kind of just average white guy, average girl that's hip. Like it wasn't like there's too much depth to the characters. That's what I would say, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But taking a look at some of the letters here, we have people talking about Bleem. Remember Bleemcast?
Waiting for it still.
We have someone, I'll just read a random one here. So, greetings from Toledo, Ohio. Yes, we do play Dreamcast here. I have a question regarding an FYI article I saw on ODCM number 4. It mentioned a newly formed developer in Japan called Cavia Incorporated. The news bit went on to describe how Cavia is working on games that are based on anime franchises. It even went so far as to name 2 titles I'm very interested in, My Neighbor Totoro and Princess Mononoke. Do you have any updated information on these projects based on Hayao Miyazaki's creation? Yeah, isn't that wild? Like, they were going to have Dreamcast Princess Mononoke. That would have been epic. But
I would have been all over that.
But they said they've yet to hear any news on it. Cavia.com. What an odd one. They also have someone asking about the Dreamcast Swatch Watch. Any info on the Swatch for DC release? The Swatch for DC has never been confirmed for the US, as it's pretty much a very Japanese type of promotion. We'll keep you updated if this changes. And they also are very open about talking about CDX and Game Shark and like importing like boot discs. In fact, in a later letters section, they actually give away a boot disc as like a prize, a CDX.
I wonder if they got in trouble for that. Like,
I think should, right?
Yeah, because it's like you're working for an official magazine giving out boot discs to. It does curve game sales. Like, if everyone buys Shenmue 2 in Europe and then it comes out in America, they're going to be like, I guess America doesn't really want Shenmue anymore, so
yeah,
we won't release the next one, you know? So it does affect the markets.
This last letter here, C Maniac. Let me just start by saying that I love your mag, but when I got your September-October 2000 magazine, I nearly died when I saw your C-Man rating, 6 out of 10. Ouch. I had reserved the game and was thinking about getting my $10 back for the reservation, but I decided to go ahead and get the game. I played it and got the hang of it. Then, after I started playing this game for a couple of weeks, I noticed a few flaws in your review as I skimmed over your mag. First off, you said that you had to do a lot of tedious jobs and stuff. All you have to do is hold up on the D-pad. Wow, if that's tedious to you, you guys must be really lazy. Then you basically put it down because it wasn't a game. The creator of Seaman described it as an experience. There's something new each day, and it takes weeks before you can experience the entire game. Unlike other games where you spend $50 on the game and play for a few hours, The Sims, one of the best PC games of the year, was a sim, not a game, just so you guys know. The guy's kind of rambling now. And finally, the biggest flaw, drum roll, you advised us to kill one of the Seamen in the Gilman stage. Shame on you. Thank you for taking the time to read my email. Just keep up your good work and making the mag great.
Did you notice this? Signed, Barry the Nomad. Did you see that on the
Yeah. No. That's Paul Scholey, and he doesn't give his email address, so he doesn't want people
to respond back. He doesn't care. He's too busy playing Seaman.
Right. So there you go with issue 9.
Ooh.
We are now going to page over to issue 10, kind of an epic issue here. Issue 10, it released in late November on my birthday, apparently.
Wow.
It features Grandia 2 on the cover, which is previewed alongside Skies of Arcadia and a Tony Hawk review. There's also another holiday guide and a review of Samba de Amigo, which I did want to focus on. Before we get to that, though, I did really love this article, A Tale of Two RPGs. You can see it here.
Yeah, that was the thing. Can you believe the non-Sega game got the cover when there was two RPGs coming out?
Like Skies of Arcadia is not going to make the cover? That's kind of wild. But it's a really nicely laid out article. Lots of big pictures and like anime art of the characters. I really dug that. But the issue itself is actually kind of light. It's a very, I feel like it's a shorter issue. They do have Quake 3 Arena reviewed. They gave it a 9 out of 10. They also gave Test Drive Le Mans a 9 out of 10, which is surprising. I never really think about that game. Frogger, which remember they were like hinting at, they finally got around. It finally released and they gave it like a 6. Like they weren't that into it. But yeah, my focus for this one then is that I wanted to take a look at the review for Samba de Amigo.
It got a 9. You think it deserves a 9? Look at the graphics, so blocky. There's no real life aspects to it. There's no mic support. What is this? Explain this game to people. You play maracas.
Well, I mean, you play maracas, and I mean, I would, definitely give it a 9 out of 10 with the maracas. Maybe a lot less without them, but this is a review of the game as it was with the maracas.
Meant to be played.
They make that clear. It's wild, too, that Samba de Amigo made a comeback. I don't think the game sold too well. I don't think it'll ever come back again.
Right. And it was
but I'm glad it did.
It continued, too, supposedly the character's existence, right?
Yeah, it's cool that you can now look on a wiki entry and be like, latest game, what was it, 2024, 2023?
23.
Yeah. But yeah, it's cool to see them giving such a niche game so much love and coverage here. It's funny that all the screens they're getting a D.
Right,
they're
a D not
rating.
Very good.
They're not very good at it.
Yeah, no. It would be like me if I was doing Hatsune Miku reviews and you're like, oh man, why does George suck at this game? Because I suck at rhythm games, that's why. Anyway.
But there is another article in a different issue where they talk about party games, and this one makes the cut, and that's what really sold me on it. I'm like, oh, I can have friends come over. I never did. But,
it's like when they sell you a house and they're like, you need an extra large living room. Well, how about your friends come over? And you never have anyone over, though.
Now, interestingly, it says here there are only 10,000 maracas on the market. You think that's in the U.S.?
Maybe at total. How many people bought the maraca besides you buying 5?
I have 1, and then I have 2 bootlegs, but or third parties, whatever. Cha-Cha Amigo, and then King of Maracas, I think it's called. So there you go. Some love for. I don't know why they call it cutscenes. The cutscenes are executed seamlessly using the in-game engine. The story isn't half bad either. Does the game have a story?
I don't think so. I don't remember it. You played it more than I have.
There's the course challenges, but I never really saw those as a story. But in any case, nice to see them showing some love for Samba de Amigo. The next issue, issue 11, iconic. Once again, bittersweet. I mean, it's iconic cover, but it was kind of bittersweet. It was the last demo disc to be included. We didn't know at the time that it was the last one, but it ended up being that. Maybe it was a sign that things were looking bleak for the console, but being released in December 2000, the issue predated the official announcement of the console's demise by a few months. The cover story was a much anticipated preview of Phantasy Star Online. Now, you wouldn't think that. Looking at this, you're like, oh, it's the review. This is the preview.
Right.
Which is kind of wild.
And I think that at this time, didn't Sonic Adventure 2 already release? Or maybe not. But it did come with a demo for this game. So that's where I first played it. I don't know if this cover sold me or the story sold me, but the demo on Sonic Adventure 2 totally sold me. Or no, it was the other way. It was the other way around. The demo came in the game. There you go. And I think the demo was just a video on the GD-ROM disc that I'm thinking of then.
I believe you might be right. Yeah, and this issue, it previews Sonic Adventure 2. It previews Phantasy Star Online. It has an interview with Sonic Boom Boy himself, Yuji Naka.
Oh, yes.
It also has a strange tease of the Dreamcast 2 on the cover, a guide to how to clean a disc, which I think is the lamest article. It's like you're just filling up space now.
You're doing a WikiHow article.
Yeah. A guide to forbidden games of Japan, and reviews for some really hot titles like Hoyle Casino, Miss Pac-Man, and Surf Rocket Racers.
Pretty good games. It's pretty.
Also worth noting, the issues are starting to get kind of thin. Like the paper quality's light. It does not break 100 pages. I think it ends at 96. 96 pages.
Everything's falling apart at this point.
They talk about the GD-ROM being in the next issue. It never was. But as far as what was included with this one, let me see if they usually list the GD-ROM titles at the front. Was it Outrigger? Oh yeah, so 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker, Metropolis Street Racer, Max Steel, Outrigger, 4x4 Evolution, Jurassic 5 quality controlled music video.
Yeah, that's the one.
I always love watching that.
Yeah, we did a GD-ROM. We would be watching that video.
Yeah, and I bought like all their albums after watching that. I was like, these guys rock, and I like them in Jet Set Radio as well. Also, Browser 2.6 disc. I never actually used the browsers on the demo disc because there were so many like menus to click through to get there. Whereas like the straight browser disc just went right to the internet.
The good stuff.
But as far as like what we're going to look at in this one, it's kind of big. We didn't know what was going on at the time. Neither did the staff, but you probably heard them talking about it in the audio clips we played earlier. But this article, DC Direct News, this is that Dreamcast 2 article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what it says here, evolution or revolution, Dreamcast takes 2 giant leaps into the future. There were a few surprises at Sega's recent Executive Games Summit, but our eyebrows raised the highest when Charles Belfield, VP of Corporate and Marketing Communications, gestured at a Dreamcast and said, "We will ship a box like that in 2 years? No." So everyone's like, wait, so you're going to phase out the Dreamcast in 2 years? And they were saying, no, the Dreamcast platform remains central to our plans going forward. And so what Sega talked about was the Dreamcast on a chip, and also being included in PCs and DVD players.
And TVs, I think, too, was one of the ideas.
Yeah. I was just going to mention, they wanted to turn it into a free system business model. So, right now you get a rebate for buying a Dreamcast by subscribing to SegaNet for 18 months. But they said in the future, you think of it as a cable box or digital satellite dish. You get to pay to get the content, but you don't pay for the hardware. So Sega would be able to afford to give Dreamcast technology to anyone who wants it. So it would be in DVD players. It would be in the Xbox, which was something we learned later was being considered. And so people didn't know what to call it. Will current Dreamcast owners be able to play games written for upgraded, don't call it DC2 hardware? Forward compatibility isn't a reality net yet, but it could be within the realm of possibility. So it was Sega throwing a lot of things to the press. I think
to see what sticks
behind the scenes. I don't think they actually made anything.
No, how are you going to put a console? How are you going to put a big arcade on a chip that goes into everything and it's like free? Like, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to be like, we'll have so much hardware that plays our games that everyone has to develop for us, and there'll be so much hardware that it'll sell. So so you have millions and millions of TVs that could play Dreamcast games and downloaded them off the internet. It kind of sounds like what Microsoft wants to do with Game Pass, and I don't think it's still going to work for them, in my opinion. Because I think they think of consoles in a weird way, sadly. Like this whole idea that people that buy consoles want a console, they just want to plug it in and play. Right. So I don't know about this. Especially back then where you have to download games. Do you think people were ready back then for full digital game downloads like that?
No. And I can understand their confusion because like Sega's telling them that in a few years you won't have a Dreamcast anymore.
Exactly.
But you will have it included in everything. So it's like, what are we becoming? A DVD? Like, I don't know. It's very strange.
So what do you think about this quote right here? It says, Sega's future is all about delivering content. So like, isn't that third party, non-hardware?
That is third party. They just don't go out and say it. And even the writer of this piece themselves kind of muses, because they're like, well, if Sega's going to bring Dreamcast architecture to a wider audience, they write here, the company isn't talking, but we can tell you who they aren't partnering with. Sony, which has its own small game division with a combo game player, DVD player out now. Panasonic made a deal with Nintendo to include GameCube technology in its DVD players. And Toshiba, which is already in bed with Sony thanks to a deal regarding joint manufacture of PS2 chips, which leaves RCA, JVC, and Samsung, which is just like...
Samsung wasn't
really,
that
like,
big back then. So, like, Samsung's huge now. That would have been a huge name now. But back then...
But it's a good point, because there was a Panasonic DVD player with a GameCube playability.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I remember at the time reading about this and feeling a little like uneasy about it, but also kind of excited, because I'm like, I guess the first DVD player I get is going to play Dreamcast games. That's kind of cool. Okay. Like, that's the Dreamcast 2. It's going to be like a joint thing between Sega and some DVD company. Maybe it'll be like the Samsung Sega Dreamcast.
It's funny.
You know,
it's funny that we're like, oh, it has to be on a DVD player because of how dominant DVD technology sold PS2. That now people don't even really care, and now disc drives are optional on the new PlayStation Pro or whatever. So it's like now consoles don't even ship with a disc drive. You have to buy it separately.
Right. Yeah. And what I was talking about was the Panasonic GameCube. It's called the Panasonic Q, and they sell for thousands of dollars now. They're so expensive. It's kind of ugly. I mean, it is still a cube, but it honestly looks like a toaster. I don't know. It's definitely a product of its time. And, obviously we know it didn't actually go that way. Issue 12 hit. It was the final issue in February 2001. We didn't know at the time that it would be the final issue. The only thing that felt kind of ominous to me, and I actually kept it, was the letter they included with it. And this letter says, a supplement to Dreamcast. Dear Dreamcast subscriber, effective with March-April 2001 issue of the official Dreamcast magazine, we will no longer include a demo GD-ROM. We know that not receiving a GD-ROM is a disappointment, but we understand that Sega is developing a new approach for distributing previews of the newest games. We will be sure to let you know when we find out more. Yeah, what's the new approach? As always, we'll continue to provide you with the inside story on Sega news and, of course, the latest previews and reviews of the hottest Dreamcast games out there. Thank you for being such a loyal subscriber. We hope you enjoy this issue. Sincerely, Chris Charla, Editor-in-Chief. P.S. If you want to cancel your subscription, please write to Dreamcast. Well, you don't need to cancel. This was the last issue, but it's interesting that like Sega wasn't giving them all these details. They were probably like, we're doing the Dreamcast on chip, and then they put that issue out, and they're like, by the way, we're not doing the GD-ROM anymore. We're going to have a new approach for distributing previews. What does that mean? Like, what's the new approach? The only thing is a disc. We didn't get downloadable games until 2 generations later.
I'm pretty sure they were coming up with ideas, and then it closed up. It was over.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the gist you get from this. It is a very... I mean, they still have the subscriber cards. This one's kind of still connected. But, so they weren't over. They still thought they had like a life beyond this issue. But it is definitely a short one. Let me see how many issues... No, it's still 96 pages. But yeah, they definitely scaled back. Spider-Man made the cover to promote a great port of a great PS1 game, at least.
I feel like the new games have like overshadowed the old ones, but the old ones were... This 3D one was pretty impressive, and I think a lot of ideas are still present in the new ones.
It's kind of wild, though, that a port of a PlayStation game made the cover. I don't think any other cover was like a PlayStation port.
It's Tony Hawk 2.
Oh, I guess you're right. Yeah. It was an all right issue. I think my favorite bit was the Skullhead maracas, which I actually did a classic Sega Magazine Corner article on Sega Bits.
Are those real?
And what's that?
Are those real? The
no, they
just like modified.
They put like Halloween decoration skulls on the top of. It's modified, but they walk you through how to do it. It's kind of scary because they're breaking maracas,
right?
And they just said there was like 100,000 or something in the
10,000.
U.S. or 10,000. But yeah, so the issue itself, it was blissfully unaware of the end to come. And the next issue was previewed. Peter Moore had an interview like at the very end, which is kind of ominous. And Project Justice was reviewed. Sega Gaga was newsed, and there was a feature on video game movie adaptations. And now we could cover something grand for the final issue, but you know what? I think let's cover something goofy, because sometimes this magazine is the only source for stuff that happened way back when that no one knows about anymore. And that is the Sega Spud Dive 2K. Look at this insanity. So
is that like Reagan and Bush mask?
It's people in Reagan and Bush masks. So the Sega Spud Dive 2K, I guess I'll just read it. With so many great games, an increase in sales, and another mind-blowing price drop. Look, that's such a positive way to talk about price drops.
So much value.
I know, right? This past year has proven to be nothing short of a spudtacular for Dreamcast. Hence the Sega Spud Dive 2K, held in the heart of Hollywood just outside the famous Mann's Chinese Theater, with a supersized Angeline billboard presiding over the peeled, boiled, and whipped goodness. The lucky contestants jumped into a tank of more than 2,000 gallons of creamy mashed potatoes in search for the letters S, E, G, and A. The payoff, a chance to win a brand new Dreamcast, plus all-you-can-eat Sega Dreamcast games for life, plus $1,000 in cash. Okay, because I was going to say...
Wait, what did they give you for life? What did they give you for life?
Dreamcast games for life, which is funny because they discontinued the console right after this.
What a good deal for Sega.
After randomly choosing 5 intrepid spud divers, all of whom were guaranteed a new Dreamcast and a bundle of Sega games for their effort, each contestant was given 30 seconds to navigate their tuberific matrix. A thrilling dive-off determined the grand prize winner, and after his second successful immersion, Levi Buchanan of GameFan Online walked away with a whole kit and caboodle. Sega Dreamcast games for all of eternity. Imagine that. Fans, tourists, and even street performers gathered round to check out the Sega Mobile Assault Tour vehicles and enjoy the festivities. Those are cool. As Sega reps gave away armloads of merch to anyone who come up with the answers to trivia questions like, what kind of animal is Sonic the Hedgehog?
Dog.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you're right. Hedgehog. And the winners of impromptu challenges like, okay, people, stick your hands in the potato and let's see who can hold their breath the longest. And what kids these days will do for a free copy of Shenmue. And looking at these pictures, it's really disgusting.
Yeah, I wouldn't put my face in that.
The winner there,
how
Sega
much did he
Spud,
make?
he got $1,000. But yeah, it's just people in Sega diving hats covered in potatoes.
How do they find people to do this, you think? They just go out in the street and go, hey, you want to do this promotional thing? Oh,
that's George W. Bush and Al Gore in the potatoes, because it was the election season.
Wait, oh, yeah, you're right. Al Gore, you're right.
Yeah.
I totally forgot him.
But, I mean, it's kind of one of the things I really love about the official Dreamcast magazine is it's a slice of what was going on at the time, and they would cover weird press events like this and like the Seaman one at an aquarium, and it's like you're not going to hear about this really anywhere else, and you might even forget about it. I love too that they give the names of the winners.
Are you sure?
So that
this isn't just an actual picture of George W. Bush stealing the election? I'm just joking.
It looks like he is. Yeah. And I'm gonna see if I can find this guy. So Levi I couldn't find the ooh la la.
Are you gonna stock them
girl.
online?
Levi
Of course, you already looked up
Buchanan.
ooh la la person.
Game fan. Let's see. Oh, okay. It looks like he's on LinkedIn.
Wow, you're gonna send him a job offer? What does he do? Graphic?
Oh, look at this. So he worked on the Star Wars Rogue Squadron Player's Guide.
So he's an industry guy.
Yeah, let me find him here. Levi has over 20 years of game industry experience starting at Nintendo. He's always on the lookout for the next big game and innovative studios.
So
let's see. He works at a company called Rogue. He did business development at EA and Chilingo.
So all these people are like friends of friends that do these contests. I'm assuming like they're in the industry. It's kind of like how Chris was just happy. Chris Tang just happened to be in that Rock the Rock, but he worked at a company and knew that they were doing.
Let's see. But yeah, he worked at EA. He worked at IGN, and he lives in Oregon right now. So there he is, the Spud Diver himself. So yeah, let's see now. Coming up next.
Wow.
To close things out now. All right. We're going to take a look at the issue 13 that never was. So the next issue would have included a preview of Samba de Amigo version 2000, which we know never actually released to the West. It was going to be called, I think, just like Samba 2000 or Samba de Amigo 2000. Shake 'em, baby. Don't break 'em.
Should have been 2K. People would be like, is this a sports game? Samba?
That would have been sick. Yeah, that would have been smart. Phantasy Star Online would have been reviewed. Francesca Reyes would have been reviewing it. We actually asked her what she would have scored it, or if she had scored it. I think she said she never started the review. She was maybe playing the game and taking notes, but she would have given it a 10.
Right.
They also would have had exclusive previews, new secret codes, an update on Half-Life, and a reveal of upcoming sequels. Of course, that never happened. But that would have been a cool issue. It would have been a PSO issue. It would have been a more Samba de Amigo, but it never happened. And it would have released April 3rd. So, final thoughts, George, on official Dreamcast magazine?
It's the last Dreamcast. It's the last console by Sega. The last time that I think magazines were really relevant. I think even then, back then, if you had internet access, you could look up stuff online. But it was for people that didn't have constant internet. And also, blogging wasn't as popular as it is today. Like now, something happens, and there's already like 10,000 people that commented on the event, and you could get so many perspectives, so many. Even movies now, I think, makes them sometimes less fun. Where you go watch a movie and you're like, man, I kind of like that, and then somebody breaks down why the movie's dumb, and you're like. Ignorance sometimes is bliss. So it was nice having these magazines bi-monthly, not even monthly. It was kind of weird, right? They took so long. Yeah. That's why there's only 14 or something of them. So great covers if you guys collect them. I think 20 per issue is a lot because I think they used to be like 20 for a lot. But of course, gaming prices have changed over the years. Any final words for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very influential magazine. It was really kind of like almost like a fan club for me because, it was the way that I kept up on the console and kept up on what was coming. The demo discs were always a real treat. And I love the writing. I love the I guess you almost feel like camaraderie with these people because you're all waiting for Shenmue. You're all like stressing about, if games will release to the West, and they really, shared their fandom kind of bled through the page, which I thought was really nice. And it's bittersweet that it ended, but the fact that the magazine ended not because of what they did, but because of what Sega did says a lot. Like, they didn't end the magazine because they're like, oh, subscriber numbers are down, people hate us, this is a failure. It was really just like they probably lost the license. And it's a shame, but also at the very least, the spirit lived on. We had Xbox Nation, which was a lot of former official Dreamcast magazine people. I collected those issues as well when I I was aware that they had shared writers, and I have since collected the full lineup of Xbox Nation as well. I love that magazine. And it was a very Sega-centric magazine like this was. I too remember at the time that magazines like Next Generation started to get slimmed down.
Right.
I don't know if they shifted us over to Next Gen or something, but I remember getting Next Gen after this folded, and I remember getting those issues. They were big and cool, and then they suddenly like lost 2 inches, and then they like canceled it entirely, and then they started sending me like men's magazines.
Oh, nice!
And it was really a sign at the time, because it was a really stupid one. I didn't like the magazine, and it was kind of that era of Spike TV just like dudes being dudes, and it's like a lot of the I don't know. It feels like a lot of intelligence was cut out of media at the time, because you get these issues and it's people who actually talk to the developers and people who actually play the games and people who actually know the source material. And then you fast forward a few years and everything's like, check out the boobs on this one, and it was like
those Maxim magazines, it's just like softcore porn, but there's no articles. The articles are there. They're like, check out cheeses that suck. Top 10 cheeses that suck on your nachos.
Right. And so it was like dude bro man show stuff, just kind of like taking over, and it's a shame. But yeah, I really love these magazines. We'll revisit again with a look at the demo discs, because there's some interesting things there. But yeah, so the next episode is going to be episode number 150.
No, 150 already. But we'll be covering Sonic Frontiers, going into a whole new frontiers of Sega Talk episodes.
I'm here.
And I think a few people like Sonic Frontiers. It does a lot of new things that I have to list and we have to talk about. It'll be an interesting thing. We'll talk about stuff we love, stuff we hate, and some of the updates, the first updated long-term Sonic project. Catch us next time on Sega Talk. Bye.
Bye.